the first one I'm sure we've done before. It's probability. Have we done probability with the? Tell me what you have on your notes for probability. Is there something else on probability? Somebody else. I need to know what our starting point is. Maybe we haven't done probability. Have we not done any probability?
I did last year.
So then we have to start from kind of the beginning. First of all, probability is, children, probability is the likeliness of something happening. And we express it as a fraction. And just to give you a visualization of said fraction, you have to think about it like this. Let's just say we have this line that goes from 0 to 1. If something has a 0 probability, here's our probability line. If something has a 0 probability of happening, it is not going to happen. It is certain not to occur. That's not the words we used to use. Basically, it's impossible. Impossible. That's a 0 probability. If something has a 1 probability, it is absolutely certain to happen. You know, the probability that it's Wednesday today is 1, because it is. It can't change. It won't change. Now, we split fraction up in there. If we cut it right down the middle and we have a 1/2 probability, then something is as likely as not to happen. You know, the probability if you have a baby, is it being a boy or girl, is 1/2. I think it might be a little different on both, but it's as likely as not that you have a boy or girl or whatever it is. Okay? And then if it falls below a 1/2, you know, let's say it's a 1/4, it's probably unlikely. Now that doesn't mean it won't happen, but it's not likely. It's a little like winning the lottery. Your probability of winning the lottery is not 0, but I'll tell you what, it's pretty close to 0. You know, it's very, very, very unlikely you are going to win the lottery. That's just the way it works. And then anything over here that's above 1/2 is kind of likely to happen. You know, probability of you having homework today, it's probably somewhere right there actually. But it's kind of hard to put probability of those sort of things. But, and usually when we do that, here's kind of a gist, you know, the probability, and rather than writing out that long word probability, I wish I would have put this on the top. If I asked you the probability of flipping a coin and getting ahead, this is kind of how we write that whole statement. Probability of flipping ahead, we write it like that. Mr. Schmeckpepper, to what do I owe the honor of your presence today?
How you doing? Good.
Very good, yeah.
Good. Where are your big kids at? The gym?
I may know where 8th grade's at. No, they wouldn't be on. They shouldn't be in the gym unless the teacher took them there. I can tell you in one short
English. English. Yes, English.
I was wondering if I could borrow a picture of that.
Walking in their class. Is it? I remember walking in their class.
What is it, 10:30 right now? They are in English, but you may have better luck with maybe a 7th grader in PE.
Okay.
Wait, do they have PE or Spanish?
Somebody's in PE.
PE.
Yeah, we'll grab this.
We're strong.
Okay, that might be an easier.
We're strong.
Fine, English is kind of a tough one to get hold of. Now, oh, sorry, yeah, probability of flipping ahead. Now, to figure probability, here's the fraction that you use. On the bottom is all the total of possible outcomes. And the nice thing about flipping a coin is there are only 2 outcomes. You either get a head or a tail. On top, you put how many of those you want there are. How many there are. And how many heads are on a coin? Well, there's only 1. So your probability of flipping a coin and getting a head is 1/2. That's probably why before football games, they use a coin to flip to see if you get to pick which side you get or whatever, because it's supposed to be fair. Now let's say, I was going to do something else. Now let's do, a lot of times the book will throw in there a spinner. And the spinner's broken into 4 sections there. The probability of spinning a 3. How many total sectors are there? 4. How many of them are 3s? 1. So your probability of spinning a 4 or a 3 or a 4 is 1/4. 1 out of 4 times. Again, remembering it's not an exact science. Probability is exactly what that is probability. Now take out a blank piece of paper. And with probability, a lot of times they will ask you about what's called sample space. A sample space is a set or the set of all outcomes. Okay, and it's better if you just see an example of that. For example, if I asked you for, if you flip a coin twice, what is the sample space for flipping a coin twice? Now in math, when we talk about making a set of numbers, we use my favorite symbol of all in math. We use these things we call a brace. I love to make braces. When you talk about having a set of something, we always use that little brace thing. And if you think about the sample space, just means all the combinations. Well, what are our combinations for flipping a coin? You could get a head first and then a head second, correct? I probably should put commas after that. You get a head and a head. You could get a head first and then a tail second. You could get a tail first and a head second. And you could get a tail first and a tail second. This is the sample space. You would be sad if I asked you to write down the sample space for drawing a card out of a deck of cards, because how many different cards would you have to write down? It'd be 2. You'd have to go, the 2 of hearts, the 2 of clubs, the 2 of diamonds, the 2 of spades. The 3 of those would be all your possible choices, and that would be a very large sample space. The sample space of, if I asked you the sample space of on a rolling a die. Was it rolling a dice? Rolling a die. What's your sample space? Well, it's nice because there's only 6 possibilities with the dice. It's A1, A2, A3, A4, A5, and A6. This is your sample space. Those are just the different outcomes. If I asked you the probability of rolling a 4, what is my probability of rolling a 4? Well, you look at your sample space, because the bottom number is how many numbers are down there. 6. How many 4s are there on the number cube? Just 1. 1 out of 6 times. What's your probability of rolling a Yahtzee with 5 dice in 1 spin? It'd be 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, like 6, 1 in 64, 1 in something like that. And then last piece of note, well, no, there's 2 more, sorry. Blank piece, I can go back to that later. Write down the word chance. I'm not talking about the rapper today. How did chance ever make it so big anyways? He's on everything.
Oh, wait, you said I was going to say, like...
Chance is really the same exact thing as probability, except chance is always given in percent form. Okay? So if I asked you, I don't know how to do that. You know, the chance of getting heads. Well, you know the probability is 1/2, but I put chance in percent, so 1/2 is what percent? You'd have to say it's a 50% chance. And a good way to remember that is, when do we hear about chance all the time? On your local weather forecast, they always give you the chance of rain, precipitation, or whatever. You know, there's a 25% chance of rain. Which means, is it going to rain or is it not going to rain? Well, it's unlikely to rain, but I've seen 0 chances of rain and it actually rained, which doesn't make sense, but that sometimes happens. So chance is the same thing as probability, just, and make sure you write that down because I know that comes up on quizzes. I will ask you what the difference between chance and probability is, and you just have to say chances in percent, probability in fraction. Good, and then the last one. Write down this. This is the complement. Complement. Let me find it here. In my book here. There it is. Oh, where is it? Complement of an event. This is just because this comes up sometimes in math there. The complement of an event is the opposite. Which would mean this. Let me just say, let's say I ask you, what's the probability of me picking a boy in 6th grade? Which would mean, how many total kids are in 6th grade? I believe there's 25. How many of those 25 are boys? Okay, boys. What are there? 12. So my probability of picking a boy is 12/25. The complement of that would be the probability of me not picking a boy. Which wouldn't necessarily mean a girl, but the probability of me not picking a boy would be the opposite of that, and that would be 13/25. Because it would be picking a girl. That's what the complement is. And then the one big thing they always ask you about this is, what do you get if you add something up with its complement? If I take 12/25 and put it with 13/25, what do I always get? What is 12 plus 13? 25 over 25 is 1. And they will ask you that 5 or 6 times. If, write this down, if you add the probability of an event with its complement, it equals 1. Because it either is or isn't. Just like going back to the spinner. Probability of spinning a 3 was 1 out of 4. The probability of not spinning a 3 was 3 out of 4. If you put those together, you get 1. This, ladies and gentlemen, concludes